How can a state as bold and powerful as Texas, home to oil fortunes, tech giants, and some of America's fastest growing cities, leave so many without a place to sleep? It's a question that sparks debate in political circles and on street corners alike. Behind the glass towers of Houston and the music-filled streets of Austin, there exists another Texas, a Texas of tents, overburdened shelters, and people fighting every day just to survive. Veterans, young adults aging out of foster care, and parents with children are all part of this story, too often ignored. Today, we'll step into that story, peeling back the layers of one of America's most urgent crises. One, Texas, the land of plenty, but not for everyone. Recent state and federal reports highlight a homelessness crisis in Texas that can no longer be ignored. As of early 2025, nearly 28,000 Texans experience homelessness on any given night. And over the course of the year, more than 60,000 individuals will lack stable housing at some point. These numbers are not just statistics. They represent families with children sleeping in cars, veterans battling chronic pain and bureaucracy, immigrants seeking a better life, and individuals fleeing domestic violence. One of the most alarming trends is the sharp rise in family homelessness, with reports showing a 40% increase. Over 6,500 households with children are now part of Texas's homeless population. Some areas are hit harder than others. Austin, known for its vibrant music scene and innovation, saw its homeless count surge by 36% in just 1 year. Fort Worth experienced an 11% increase, while Dallas, after years of targeted investment, managed to reduce its numbers by about 5%. These contrasts underscore an important truth. Local policies, resources, and leadership play a critical role in shaping outcomes.
That's true. Today's economy and the way the government is set up, I can't believe it. The reason I'm on the street right now is because of Social Security made a blooper and cut out my Social Security check, so I haven't drawn a penny in the last 2 months.
Behind these figures are systemic pressures that go beyond individual choices. Housing costs in Texas have soared, particularly in the state's rapidly growing cities. Affordable housing has failed to keep up with demand, and many pandemic-era support programs have expired. Stagnant wages for low-income workers mean even those who are employed often end up living in shelters or their cars. This reality challenges the long-held image of Texas as a land of limitless opportunity. It reveals that prosperity is not evenly shared, and that structural gaps, such as the lack of affordable housing, insufficient mental health support, and limited social safety nets, are leaving thousands behind. The question becomes, is homelessness in Texas the result of individual failure, or a reflection of broader economic and policy shortcomings? In many ways, this local crisis mirrors the national challenge, serving as a microcosm of the broader story of homelessness in America.
Homeless, let's see, it's depressing, it's a mental breakdown. You know, if you don't find any kind of sort of way to find food, shelter, it can get real critical. You know, sometimes it can get to a point where people die.
Walking through downtown Austin or Houston, the contrasts are striking and impossible to ignore. A luxury condo may stand across the street from a cluster of tents. A busy cafe spills music and chatter onto the sidewalk, while a man sits nearby, clutching a plastic bag that holds everything he owns. Who are these people, and what brought them to this point? Take Laura, for example, a young mother of two who was recently laid off after a hospital closure. Now, she spends nights rotating between friends' couches and the back seat of an old sedan. Or consider James, a 62-year-old veteran from Decatur, who served his country only to return to chronic pain and a sluggish veterans support system. His savings vanished with mounting medical bills, and now his home is a park bench. Then there's Evan, a teenager aging out of foster care in Houston, uncertain how to pay rent while fighting loneliness. These are not isolated cases. They represent a much larger issue. The street tells stories that numbers cannot capture. The relentless heat of a Texas summer beats down on the asphalt, turning every step into a challenge. When rare cold fronts arrive, freezing rain can be deadly for those without shelter. In some places, people share food, look out for one another, and find dignity in small routines. In others, fear dominates. Fear of violence, theft, and the next police sweep of an encampment. For many, substances offer a temporary refuge, not for thrill, but to numb hunger and trauma. This is where empathy meets reality. Every person on the street once had a beginning, and many still have futures if the right doors open. As you hear these stories, ask yourself, what would you do if one medical bill or a sudden job loss took away your home? Could it happen to you or someone you love? The more we understand these lives, the less the phrase homeless in America remains an abstract term, and the more it becomes something human and urgent. Three, the fentanyl shadow when streets turn into battlefields. Among the many forces driving homelessness, one has become especially lethal: the rise of fentanyl and synthetic drugs. Texas, like much of the nation, is grappling with an opioid and stimulant crisis that has transformed sidewalks into triage zones. Fentanyl, a synthetic opioid many times stronger than heroin, is cheap, potent, and deadly. For those already struggling, whether due to trauma, mental illness, or the crushing weight of poverty, it offers a dangerous escape. Unfortunately, that escape often becomes a trap. Reports from Houston and Austin show a sharp rise in overdoses, many occurring in homeless encampments or shelters. Emergency crews are responding to more calls involving fentanyl-laced pills, methamphetamine, and counterfeit prescriptions. Outreach workers describe seeing users barely clinging to life, with Narcan kits now as common as flashlights. This drug wave doesn't just affect individuals. It strains hospitals, burdens law enforcement, and terrifies families. Some cities are even debating whether to treat addiction as a criminal issue or a public health crisis. Why does addiction hit the homeless so hard? Part of it is the environment. Living on the streets is stressful, dangerous, and often isolating. Drugs can offer a temporary reprieve from pain and fear, even if only for a short time. Another factor is accessibility. Cheap, potent substances flood the market, making them hard to avoid. For some, the cycle begins before they even hit the streets. Loss of a job, untreated depression, or childhood trauma. The line between user and victim often blurs quickly. Fentanyl's impact also shapes public perception, many people seeing encampments littered with needles conclude that the problem is unsolvable. But is it fair to reduce the crisis to addiction alone? Or should we ask how our systems, from healthcare to housing, failed these individuals long before they ended up on the streets? The answer is complex, but one thing is clear. Ignoring the drug crisis is to ignore a major driver of homelessness. This, too, is part of the larger conversation about homelessness in America, where substance abuse, untreated mental health, and poverty intersect on the same unforgiving pavement. Texas is not a monolith. It's a vast landscape of diverse communities, and its homelessness story reflects that diversity. In Dallas and Collin counties, steady investment and coordinated strategies have led to a modest yet noticeable decline in homelessness, down nearly 5% this year. This is no small feat, considering the pressures of rising rents and a growing influx of new residents. Meanwhile, Midland saw a slight drop in its numbers, but still struggles to support vulnerable populations, particularly children and older adults slipping through the cracks. Yet, other parts of the state paint a grimmer picture. Austin's 36% increase in homelessness is alarming. Fort Worth and nearby Parker County saw an 11% jump, while Beaumont nearly doubled its homeless population in just 2 years. These figures reveal a pattern. Where housing and supportive services are scarce, the problem only worsens. However, in areas with sustained investment, the situation can stabilize or even improve. This unevenness underscores the critical role of local leadership. Cities like San Antonio have created entire departments focused on homelessness, allocating millions of dollars to outreach, shelter, and data-driven solutions. Others, however, are still debating ordinances that criminalize sleeping in public spaces or ban camping, creating contrasting outcomes. For both policymakers and citizens, this presents a vital question. Should we treat homelessness as a nuisance to be swept away, or as a social issue to be addressed with long-term solutions? The answer impacts not only those on the streets, but also the communities around them. Businesses, schools, and neighborhoods all feel the ripple effects. It's easy to blame individuals, but the numbers show that the problem often grows when systems fail. When we take a step back, Texas serves as a microcosm for larger national struggles, because what happens here is part of the broader story of homelessness in America. The causes of homelessness in Texas are far more complex than a lack of money. While financial hardship is often the most visible factor, it is just one piece of a much larger puzzle. At its core, homelessness is shaped by access, equity, and sometimes sheer chance. Take the housing market, for example. In Texas, particularly in fast-growing urban centers like Austin, Houston, and Dallas, rents and home prices have skyrocketed in recent years. Wages for many workers, especially those in low and middle income brackets, haven't kept pace. Even families with full-time jobs often find themselves priced out of stable housing. The end of pandemic relief programs, which once provided emergency rental assistance and stimulus funding, has further strained an already fragile safety net, leaving many just one paycheck away from losing their homes. Yet, financial strain alone doesn't explain everything. Mental health plays a profound, often overlooked role. Thousands of Texans living without shelter are also fighting internal battles. Conditions like depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia can derail lives. These illnesses, often untreated or undertreated due to cost or stigma, make it incredibly difficult to hold a job, stay on top of bills, or navigate social service systems. Domestic violence is another critical factor. Across Texas, shelters report thousands of women and children fleeing abusive situations, often with no savings, no support network, and nowhere safe to go. Substance use adds another layer of complexity. While headlines often focus on fentanyl and synthetic drugs, alcohol and prescription medication misuse are also widespread. For many, substances aren't about thrill-seeking. They're coping mechanisms for trauma, hunger, and fear. What begins as temporary relief often turns into dependency, making it even harder to regain stability. Unique challenges also exist for specific groups. Young adults aging out of foster care often lack the support needed when they turn 18, and veterans returning from service frequently struggle to find work or receive adequate medical care. These populations are especially vulnerable. Together, these factors highlight why homelessness is rarely the result of a single poor decision. It is the product of broken systems, housing, healthcare, employment, and justice that often fail to connect. This explains why strategies that succeed in one city may fail in another, and why the broader conversation about homelessness in America cannot be separated from debates about healthcare, mental health services, and wages. So, perhaps the real question is not who is to blame, but who will lead the change. Despite the daunting statistics, there are signs of progress and innovation in Texas. While homelessness remains a significant challenge, cities and organizations are actively testing solutions. Dallas stands out for its adoption of the continuum of care strategy, which treats homelessness as a process rather than a one-time event. This approach brings together emergency shelters, transitional programs, permanent supportive housing, job training, and mental health care under one coordinated plan. Through close collaboration with federal partners, Dallas has secured billions in funding, helping hundreds of individuals transition from the streets to stable housing. While not a complete solution, this effort shows that when systems work together, change is possible. San Antonio has also taken bold steps, recognizing that scattered efforts were insufficient. The city established a dedicated department focused solely on homelessness with a budget of over $26 million and a team of specialists. Its mission is to coordinate outreach, gather and analyze data, and create long-term housing strategies. This level of investment signals a shift from short-term fixes to structural solutions. Meanwhile, Houston is focused on supporting vulnerable groups, with a nonprofit opening a $41 million facility for young adults aging out of foster care, one of the most at-risk populations. Even the best plans face serious challenges. Funding is never guaranteed, and federal housing programs are under review, with potential budget cuts that could slow progress or undo gains. Local leaders also debate tough questions. Should camping bans be enforced to clear sidewalks, or do such measures just push people from one area to another without addressing the root causes. Outside of government, community groups play a vital role. Churches, neighborhood associations, and volunteers provide meals, temporary beds, clothing, and, importantly, dignity. They fill gaps where public systems fall short. Yet, the scale of the crisis remains a barrier. Helping a few dozen people at a church kitchen is not the same as addressing the needs of thousands across a city. Can Texas become a model for the rest of the country? It's possible. The state has the financial resources, innovation, and strong local leadership in some areas. But to turn pilot programs into statewide change, Texas will need more than funding. It will require a cultural shift, recognizing that homelessness is not an inconvenience to be swept away, but a solvable human challenge. After researching, interviewing, and walking the streets, one thing has become clear. Homelessness is not an abstract issue. It is personal. When I stood near a camp in Houston, the air thick with heat and the hum of traffic, I didn't see strangers. I saw neighbors who had run out of options. Some spoke with hope, others were simply tired. It's easy to scroll past news stories or avoid eye contact at a traffic light, but this issue affects us all. Rising costs, mental health crises, and drugs like fentanyl don't stay confined to one group. They spill into healthcare systems, affect local economies, and even shape elections. In many ways, the debate about homelessness is really a debate about the kind of society we want to be. So, what do I think? I believe solutions are possible, but they must start with empathy and honesty. We cannot police our way out of this. We cannot ignore it and hope it will disappear. We need housing, yes, but we also need prevention, treatment, and jobs. We need to value lives before they unravel. If you had the power to change one thing tomorrow, what would it be? Would you invest in housing, mental health services, or education? Or would you walk past and hope someone else will? That, I believe, is where all true solutions begin. Texas is a state of power and promise, yet thousands still sleep without shelter. Families, veterans, and young people wait for help that often arrives too late. We've seen laws change, shelters open, and camps closed, but the problem persists. This is not just Texas's story. It is part of the larger challenge of homelessness in America, a reflection of our values. Do we accept that some will always be left behind, or do we believe that everyone deserves safety and dignity? As you finish this video, ask yourself, when someone is left in the dark, what will you do?